for your help.
Thank
He's
you.
clearly been in this a long time. So welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you so much for joining us. We're super excited to have Seth here with us tonight. And just two, again, very brief introductions. And so Shift Your Thinking. We've been tracking with Seth for a long time on a personal level with our families. And Shift Your Thinking is a charity that supports families and kids and teachers with kids that have LDs, ADHD, dyslexia, and mental health challenges such as anxiety. And we do online programming. We usually have an annual live summit that's hosted in Toronto. Seth, who we are so appreciative of being here tonight, and really honestly, your generosity and dedication to helping families, you do as well just in your profession, but just during this time particularly, even the online calendars and the suggestions for teachers has just been remarkable. So for those who don't know Seth, Seth is a teacher and is now an executive functioning coach and helping parents and teachers and kids work through and supporting them with kids that are with really practical and honest advice about executive functioning, which he has an amazing blog and a prolific writer, but also YouTube channel and blog, which is incredible. I don't know, Seth, if there's anything else you want to add, please feel free to.
Nope. I like complicated kids and helping them figure out how to have a good life. Yeah, well, that's and you do that for so many families. So again, we're very appreciative. So we also just wanted to thank those that took the time and donated funds to help us continue to help families through this process. There's lots of choices out there and lots of amazing missions. And so thank you again for donations. So we have a few questions for Seth, and we're also going to, focus on a few things. And then if you want to ask questions, if you could do it through the Zoom chat, I will then convey it to Seth, and I will pass it over to you, Seth, because they don't want to hear from me. All right. Where do you want me to start?
I think when we were talking to some of our members, they were talking about motivation, because we're thinking about the fact that many people are now at home with their kids, right? I see people nodding their heads. So the motivation sort of factor of sort of getting kids started with the work that's in front of them. Do you want me to give you the list of what they were saying, or just go one at a time? Okay. Okay. Let's go with that.
Okay. So motivation is a fantastic topic, and I'll give you sort of some of the things that I say a lot before this all was going on, and then some of the things that I'm seeing right now. So one of the things that I talk about with motivation, so let me first, so executive function means that we're getting things done, and you want your kid to have a good life, and you want them to grow up, and you want them to get a good education, and you want them ideally to be motivated to do the things that they're being asked to do in school so that they can have these educational experiences and get tools for life. The problem is that people aren't motivated to do what they are not motivated to do. And when you struggle with executive function, it is a lot harder to motivate. So let me break down, first of all, motivation with some synonyms. So motivation is often very misunderstood, and it's often looked at. So we have the word motivation, we have the word unmotivated. A lot of times people will say you just need to be more motivated. A lot of times people will say you just need to the messaging to the child, you just need to be more disciplined. A lack of motivation is often called you're being unmotivated or you're being lazy. Lazy is a very shaming term that people use. It can cut really deep into the kid, or the kid can just feel that you're saying you're being lazy, but that can really have a very deep impact because our kids are so sensitive. And a lack of motivation can be called procrastination. Procrastination can also be called self-starting or task initiation in technical executive function talk. So I wanted to throw out all of those words to you right now, because in this discussion, those are all important, and they're two sides of the same coin. Procrastination, motivated. Like there's sort of basically taking action, not taking action. And our kids often have, they're very good at arguing. They're very good at excuses. They're very good at not executing and not taking action. So we're looking at them and we often think, how do we motivate them? Me as a coach, now there's a lot of great research on motivation, but as a coach, my messaging to my students, I never use the word motivation ever. I never say you need to get motivation and you need to get more motivated, because it doesn't work. Just an adult saying that emphatically does not create motivation. It may appear to, if there is the threat of a punishment or the promise of a reward or just anger or whatever. It may appear that they're taking action, but we are not creating a change in a human being and giving them real motivation that helps their life. So my question is, when it comes to a lack of motivation, how do we give kids the tools to learn to differentiate between their own, excuse me for my language, their own BS that's holding them back and a true story, because a lot of their supposed lack of motivation is the story that they have. This isn't fun. This is stupid. This is a waste of my time. Why am I doing this? Why do I have to do this? This feels bad. So my question is how, and when I'm speaking to a student, I'm going to say to them, I don't care if you're motivated or not. Seth, I am not motivated to do my taxes, and I've been doing them for weeks now, but I'm not motivated to do them. So the question isn't how do we get motivated? My question for my kids is, how do I empower you? How do you learn to do what needs to be done, even if you don't feel motivated? Because if we wait for motivation, it's not coming. So how do we learn skills, executive function skills, or whatever you want to call them? I don't really care. How do we learn to have the skills to override our own resistance and do what needs to be done and for our own long-term well-being? Instant gratification. Instantly, we want to play video games, hang out with friends, watch TV, whatever. But the long term, we want to have a good life. And when you have a teenage brain that doesn't really see the long term and that struggles with executive function, my question is, how do we help people do what needs to be done anyway? So yes, I will answer your question. How do we do that? Now, everything I say is just how I work. You take what you like and leave what you don't like. But I work with a lot of kids who are resistant, who struggle with this stuff. And so how do we do this? How do we empower them to have tools, a toolkit, let's say, to self-start? So in order to self-start, what we are dealing with here, parents, I'm assuming it's mostly parents. There might be some educators and therapists and stuff. But parents, what we are dealing with here is an emotional issue. The resistance that our students are experiencing is emotional. They feel in their body something uncomfortable. Okay. So it's like if I asked you to eat a food you absolutely hate, everybody listening can think of a food they really hate. And I tried to convince you with logic. Oh, you're going to feel so much better when you try it. You're really going to like it. It's really good for you, blah, blah, blah. And because parents will often use logic and reason and stuff to try to help their kids see the light, that their life would be so much easier if they would just do X, Y, and Z. Oh, just try it. Come on, you'll like it. Oh, I know you'll like it. Just try it. You're not motivated to do it. So how do you make something palatable? What we do now, if you have very strong, actually, I'd be curious in the chat for those of you, and I think they do cool polls now. I think it does a yes, no. Let me do a quick check on this because I like the new, oh, I don't think you have the yes, no feature. I am curious if you think you have, on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your executive function? 10 means you are on top of it. Parents, you are awesome at executive function. The whole family's executive function. You remember dates, you're on time, you're prepared. And a 0 is horrible executive function. Awesome. Awesome. So in how parents some parents who have great executive function, it can be very baffling to watch your kid and be like, why can't they just do this? And if you have weak executive function, most of you are like, oh, okay, I kind of get it, you know, because I struggle with that stuff too.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in order to get our kids to do the things that they need to do, that they aren't motivated to do, we have to deal with the emotion. We have to deal with the sense that it feels, there's a tension to it. All right, go ahead and start your paper. So what are they feeling? They're feeling, first of all, it's in their body. This is real, right? They're feeling an emotion of resistance. They're feeling, it's overwhelming. I don't know where to start. I don't know how long it's going to take. I don't know if you're going to bug me in the middle of it and ask me a million questions that I don't have the answer to. And I'm going to either make up stupid answers or tell you to leave me alone or just flat out lie to you or tell you the truth. I don't know what's going to happen. All I know is it's big and it's overwhelming and I don't know where it's going to start. I don't know how to start and I don't know where it's going to end. And I'm not interested in this. This is not a meaningful activity to me. It doesn't seem purposeful. I don't see how this is helping my life, particularly in the short term when I have better things to do. So we have to understand that we're dealing with the emotion. So that's what I'm dealing with. So one of the things I think is very hard for parents is how long this stuff takes. So I work with kids for a minimum of a semester. But this is, and with you, the parent, they want to listen to you less than they want to listen to me or someone outside of you. Meanwhile, I put a little tip in there. When you have other people, friends, relatives, friends of the family, mentors, tutors, a cool college kid that your kid likes, use them. You don't have to be the person being your child's executive function or motivator or everything all the time. Use people when you can. There are great people out there that care about your kids. Use them. So we're dealing with emotional regulation, that we have to make it feel, if the problem is overwhelm, we have to make it feel not overwhelming. If the problem is overwhelm, we have to make it feel not overwhelming. And I wish I could tell you that this is simple, but this is not. The first thing I do when it comes to making something not overwhelming has nothing to do with the issue. It has to do with connecting with my kids. It has to do with emotionally attuning, noticing them. I had a kid on just before this call, and his dad and him were on the call on Zoom, and his dad said something about his writing, and the kid goes like this. So I was attuning to notice at that moment that the kid put his head down, and I said to the kid, I noticed you just put your head down. Why did you do that? So we want to attune. So the first thing I'm going to do, and I'm sorry to draw this out, but this is not a simple issue, people. So the first thing that somebody's got their audio on, you might click mute all and then unmute me. So we are dealing with this sort of emotional issue. We want our kids to feel regulated. We want them to feel calm. So it starts with the relationship. Hey, I'm on your team. Ready? Okay, then we have to do this task. So the next thing is I want buy-in. So, okay, are you ready to do this? No. Okay, what do you need to feel ready to do this? Well, and I want to really listen and I want to get some buy-in. And often as adults, we're saying, can you just get the stupid thing done? It seems very straightforward, but we need some buy-in. Okay, look, remember, this feels overwhelming. So we have to chunk it down, and make it feel small. So we have to get some buy-in. So I will often, and parents, this you might jot down, I will often do what's called a false choice with a student. And it depends on the student because I might give a different false choice to different students. But let's take a math assignment, for example. With a student, I might say to a student who hates math and is resistant, that for that kid, I might say, okay, look, so I'm giving buy-in. Do you want to do 3 problems, 5 problems, or 10 problems? And then, so I'm giving them ownership and buy-in. I'm asking them what they want, but I'm giving them a false choice because it doesn't matter. I made it up. 3, 5, or 10. I could say 1, 3, or 5. I could say 5, 10, or 20. Depends on the kid. If I have a kid who likes math, but they just can't get started, I might say, okay, do you want to just do 10, 20, or 30 problems? Now, I'm weaving in another concept that I want you parents to write down. And this is big. So again, the problem is overwhelm. So we have to make it feel not overwhelming. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. We are looking for baby steps here. We are not looking for them to complete their homework. We're looking for them to just self-start. Okay, you can push them once they get started, but so often we say, you got to do your homework. And again, to them, that feels big. We have to make it feel small. Chunking is this concept I'm going to explain to you now. There are 2 ways to chunk. I'm going to make this very simple for you. So first you have the false choice with a buy-in and ownership. Jot those things down. And next you have the chunking. When you're giving a false choice, you're giving a false choice of chunking it down into small bite-sized pieces. There are 2 ways to chunk. 2 ways. That's it. Keep it simple, parents. 2 ways to chunk. I'll show you. One is chunking by time, and the other is chunking by task. This is just my to-do list for today. Chunking by time or chunking by task, where you could use a checklist. Chunking by time means, hey, you got to write your paper. Do you want to work on it for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or 25 minutes? If your kid's really resistant, say 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5 minutes. It doesn't matter. We're trying to get a little momentum. A lot of your kids are so resistant, 1 minute will get them started, and they need to chunk it down. They need to feel like it's bite size. So use your timer. Kelly, can you mute yourself? Use your timer.
Fair.
Or use tasks. Okay, so in terms of the task, it would be, do you want to write a sentence or a paragraph or a page? The point is, or do you want to do the front side or the whole page, or 3 problems or 5 problems? The point is, and then a task. Writing a paper is a big task, but planning a paper is a micro task. Do you want to plan your paper, or do you want to write your paper? Well, it starts with a plan. The plan, writing an outline, is way easier than that. If they can't even get started on writing an outline, you might draw a little graphic for them and say, here, and help scaffold that. So what's happening with this motivation is that, and the overwhelm, is that for these kids who struggle with executive function, they don't even know where to start. They legitimately often have no clue where to even start. So the overwhelm they're experiencing, while you can look at them and you can say something like, I know you can do it, I've seen you do it before. Well, you've seen them do the activity before, the writing or the math or whatever. But what's happening is it's not just that. It's that they have to read the directions, which is hard for them. And they don't even know to read the directions first. They have to look at the planner. They have to find it on the portal. They have to do all these things that they don't even know. They don't think linearly because they don't have strong executive function. Those of you with strong executive function think in a very linear, left brain, step-by-step process, systems-oriented way. They do not. They're very global, often creative, divergent thinkers, not linear. So they can't sort of do that yet in their brain to figure out even where to start. So anyhow, with motivation, I'm going to sort of recap. That was a big answer, but this is an important one. You're starting with the connection, the relationship, the attunement, the noticing, the nervous system, the emotions, helping them chunk it down, see the micro tasks. And this is exhausting for parents. You guys have a life and stuff to do too. And now you're micromanaging this, but this is what they need. And I'm not trying to motivate them, but I'm trying to help them learn skills to self-start, to make a plan of the tasks they have to do, to break it down, to chunk it into time. I'm trying to make it into bite-sized pieces. Now, at this time, parents, there's a lot of scaffolding that you might be able to do to help them. So for example, you can sketch out a quick outline of a paper for them. If they have to write a 5-paragraph paper, you can put their name, date, the teacher, the title of the paper, intro, body, conclusion, bibliography, and at least you can do that in 2 seconds on your document, and then they can maybe have a little scaffolding to get started on the meat of the paper. You can maybe look at their math sheet and say, look, I'm going to do one problem for you on a whiteboard or on a scrap piece of paper and show it to you. And then you show it to them so that you know, and they can copy. Like I will sometimes have kids, I'll say, do you want me to do one for you? This is not cheating. Okay. This is scaffolding. This is pick one. I'll say, pick one. I'll do it for you. I do it for them. You know, I walk through the process so that they can see my thinking and they can get a start. Okay. So again, this motivation has so much to do with the overwhelm. Now, motivation also has to do with the lack of structure. That what these kids are going through is really hard. Their whole structure of their life has just been changed. And the last thing I'll say is that the teachers often don't know how confusing everything is. So if your kid's not motivated because they're overwhelmed, and you're overwhelmed because you don't even know what portal to look at, what day this teacher updates it, and what day the other teacher updates it, and what link this teacher uses, and what password that link needs, and you need to, and I love teachers. I appreciate teachers. They aren't mind readers. They don't know what's going on in all our families. The kid I was working with before, he had this big thing, and the mom was like, so there's a mom and the dad and the kid. The mom was like, I don't even know what this stuff is. It was talking about prepositions and adjectives, and she didn't even remember what prepositions and adjectives were from her childhood. And she's like, and there's no lesson on there to teach me. And so they're not mind readers. So you need to email the teachers and make them short. Please do not email teachers a novel. Make a short bulleted list. Hey, we're struggling with this. I always say we need clarity. Just write down the word clarity for your advocacy email. Say, we need clarity, and then ask your bullets. We need to know what days you update, where to look, what link exactly, where to find our password. Once we get into the portal, what are we supposed to click? When is this due? What if it's late? Do you accept late work? You know, and everybody has this crazy time, so everybody has different things. But whatever your questions are that you keep getting annoyed by, send them to the teacher and send them over and over and over. The teachers need to get clarity of what the problem is. And the problem is that they're often not communicating the details that you need to figure out what the heck is going on. So they give vague details. They don't know they're doing it, and they don't do it intentionally, but you'll see some teachers give exceptional details. They give you a downloadable PDF that you can print off, or if you have a printer and stuff. But some teachers, they don't understand that it's not clear. So you need to call them on it. So, last thing, motivation. The sooner you get in a structure that you create with your child for buy-in, and I'm not going to go into that. You can look at my website. We just made a video with a mom about her calendar. I made a big video on my pandemic hub, a 20-minute video talking about calendaring and scheduling. The sooner you get a structure made with your child with buy-in, the better. The longer you wait on that and your kid says, I don't need it, I'll do it on my own, leave me alone, get off my back, I've got it, why don't you trust me, stop bugging me, the quicker you get that schedule with some buy-in from them. And they're not going to follow it all the time or anything. You know, you choose your battles wisely, but the sooner you get a visual schedule on the walls that they have some buy-in to, the better. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better than a free-for-all. The free-for-all is going to cause you a lot of suffering, particularly those of you parents who rated yourself low on executive function. It's going to cause the whole family a lot of chaos and backpedaling later. That was, I hope.
That was awesome. Sorry.
It was, what did
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I didn't want to interrupt. I was just saying that was awesome. Just the emotional component of motivation is huge, and just being able to have the tools to sort of help kids step up in the scaffolding to give them the support to figure out what they need. And so that's incredible. Just one of the sort of things I walked through as a parent today was actually giving my child sort of a timeline. And she had this idea that she could do everything, but she had it on sort of a 1 day schedule. So when I said, well, put it into time, she realized she wasn't able to put it, like when she started putting it in timelines, she realized she was running out of time. So that was just something that we were doing. And she went, whoa, yeah, so maybe we need to start a little sooner.
Yeah.
And then she actually took that concept to the next day, and she actually started scheduling her day earlier. So I was so relieved that we came to that conclusion together. Yeah. So I thought that was something as well, just having that timeline for older kids. She's in high school. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think something else relevant in this too, parents, look, a lot of times my kids in my office that I work with locally, one of the and this is related to what we were just saying with the scheduling, and it's related to motivation, but they are doing, sadly, the way that our educational systems are constructed nowadays, they are often doing their homework just to get it done or get you off their back or get the teacher off their back and not have to deal with the zero or the missing or the incomplete or the late mark or whatever. They're not doing it because they're engaged in learning.
Mhm.
We have constructed a system where a lot of it is, it looks like productivity and like they're getting something done, but they're not necessarily. So you as the parent, I want to give you permission, parents, to listen to your gut and your heart. When you're looking at your kid work on something and it's painful and it's taking so long, I want to give you permission to help them get the stupid thing done and in, and it doesn't have to be perfect, or email the teacher and say, hey, we need family time, or with what's going on, we just can't do this. This is too much for us right now. I'm going to give you permission, whatever the answer is, to listen to your gut and follow it, and know that just because somebody looks active and productive doesn't mean that it is planting seeds for their future. So I want to give you the discretion and discernment to say, yeah, this isn't working for us. Sometimes we just need to get it done and turn it in. And, I don't care what the grade is. Or sometimes we need to tell the teacher, hey, we can't do this, or we've modified it. You write down the words modify or accommodate. We've made an accommodation for ourselves. We've made a modification for ourselves to make this more meaningful for our kid. And what you parents want at this time, this very bizarre time, is you want them to have educational experiences. I don't care if it's from what the teacher assigned or not. If your child, there's something called just-in-time learning. If your child, right now I'm learning a lot about viruses in the immune system. Just-in-time learning means it's something real. It's meaningful to me. It's going on in the world. I just learned about, I've been learning about anti-inflammatories and Tylenol. And, today and yesterday, I have been learning how to take apart a kitchen sink because we can't get a plumber to the house because of what's going on. I did not intend to be learning how to fix a stupid plumbing sink, but I have learned several things that haven't worked yet. And we still don't. So it's just in time learning. So if your child, obviously, if they are gaming all the time, or just online with their friends all the time, or doing things that are, watching Netflix all the time, that is not just in time learning. But if they are interested in art, music, science, if they're watching YouTube videos based on something that they nerd out about languages, about sciences, about whatever they're learning about. If they try to write a novel, if they try to start a business, if they try to start a YouTube channel, if it's safe, if they try, all of those things are learning. I want your kids involved in projects. I want your kids trying a million different things. I want them trying and failing. I want them trying several different ways to do things where they're learning, they're stretching themselves, they're challenging themselves. I don't want you parents to say, oh, that's not right, or that's not the way to do it, or let them explore when it's safe and try also. Those are the things, that's your education right now. It doesn't have to be in a school. And if you want to research how people do this well, research the unschooling movement or unschooling, because people have been doing this for years. Experiential education, project-based learning. There's lots of things. You want your kids to get meaningful stuff out of this time, not just jump through hoops when they're not engaged.
I love that. Thanks for that, Seth. That fits, and I totally agree with what you're saying.
How are we doing on time?
Well, we have 30 minutes.
I'm very long-winded, but I try to actually be very practical. But I feel like you have to really saturate in some of the stuff to really get what I've been doing for 25 years. So
well, and you're actually overlapping with what other areas of executive functioning, right? Like when you're answering a
Absolutely.
question, that sort of talks about that resistance to help, really, when you're talking about how you scaffold. And so I don't know if you
Yeah.
want to talk more about resistance to help, or it's really was covered really well.
Yeah, I think I covered it. Just know that in Seth's opinion, any executive function coach that doesn't deal with the resistance is missing the boat. And a lot of things, we have great methods, great ideas, great products you can buy, great planners. Well, if you don't deal with resistance, you're missing a massive, massive portion of what's going to help your kid. Your kid doesn't just need executive function skills. They need to learn to overcome their own resistance. That is a multitude of skills in and of itself. I want to say a quick word to those of you parents who do have exceptional executive function. And what I want to do is connect the dot with your resistance. You are not resistant to the day-to-day tasks, the tasks that would be dreadful for your child, the things that, where you enjoy checking things off a list, getting things done, feeling productive, where you enjoy that stuff, you don't have resistance there. But I want you to understand that you have resistance in other ways. So you might have resistance in terms of, let's say, taking an emotional risk and speaking your truth to somebody who's difficult to talk to. There's a form of resistance you can relate to. Having a difficult conversation, standing up for yourself, asking for a raise confidently. There's resistance. So you have your own, you can find what yours is. Resistance to thinking outside the box, to breaking a rule. So you can think about how it feels. That we all have resistances. It's just that these kids, their resistance is around the things that we have chosen to make metrics around and to measure in terms of success. Whether or not they're valid is a different story, a different discussion, but some are.
Good. Did you have some questions that you wanted to? I know some people are popping some questions in there.
So I was thinking we have questions, but maybe just to the end. So let Seth speak and then say 15 minutes, because there's probably right now about 7 to 10 questions, unless you want to answer them now, Seth.
I would like it if you guys can tell me which sort of prioritize questions in terms of where you think it would go for the greatest benefit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, motivation and resistance to help was huge. I've seen that sort of going through the feed, and that was the number one for our members as well. Sustaining attention, so being able to stay on the task. So you get them there, but it's really hard to keep them there.
Yeah, again, it's very frustrating to see how long this takes, because a lot of kids who struggle with executive function, one of many aspects of executive function, and I was talking about synonyms before, one aspect of executive function is focus, attention, and concentration. And the flip side of that coin is distractibility, or getting off track. So you have your self-starting, your task initiation. That's one part. Then you have task persistence, which is follow through. And then you have task completion. And I tell my kids, your homework isn't done until it's in. So sometimes they'll be like, okay, I'm done. Like, no, not if you didn't click submit or send it into the teacher. It's not done. But I just want that definition to be clear for my kids. But we have starting, follow through, and finishing, completion. So this person is asking about the follow through, the sustained attention, the sustained concentration, the sustained focus. And again, it's very frustrating to look at them and know, if they would just close their tabs, turn off their phone, do this or that, they could be done with it in 10 minutes. Yet they're dragging it out. They keep getting derailed and distracted. So this, again, is a skill. It's a skill. It has to be practiced. And in order for me to teach and this is similar to how you can't teach executive function without teaching about resistance. In order for me to teach someone how to focus and concentrate and attend and sustain attention, I have to teach about distractions. In order for you to focus, you have to eliminate or at least minimize distractions. So I talk about a sacred study space, the SSS, in my work and in my course. And the sacred study space is where I'm sitting at my sacred study space right now. I have a big desk. I have a standing desk in front of me and my pens and whatever. I have a place where I can focus that is free of distractions or minimize distractions. Oftentimes, our kids don't intentionally design such a place, and we need to really spend time to help them, again, buy-in and ownership. If we can get them to have buy-in and ownership where they're designing their own, that's the best case scenario. But they may be resistant to that. But we want them to have a place that they have intentionally thought through. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but that is where they can focus that has taken into consideration removing distractions. So when I say the ideal sacred study space is one that is optimized for focus, so you can write this down, a space that is optimized for focus and that minimizes distractions. Now, this is confusing because then we start getting into the questions about, well, okay, Seth, what about music? What about heavy metal music? What about classical music? My kid wants to listen to heavy metal. Is that okay? They want to listen to classical. Is that okay? These things are considerations. What about the lighting? I have a different light. These are all considerations that are different. What about a blank wall? What about a colorful room? So everybody has different preferences. But the proof is in the pudding, meaning if you, the adult, or your child can sustain more attention in a setting, then that's saying, yeah, this thing is working. And if they can't, even though they think they can, like with certain types of music. So sustaining attention, you really have to start with removing distractions. You have to start that with buy-in and getting them to be willing to do it, which is really hard, especially if your kid has addictive tendencies towards technology. But trying to create a good space. One thing that you can do with helping them sustain attention is you can co-work with them. So I do that with my students on Zoom sometimes. And then obviously when we're at my typical office, we can co-work together. But where you're doing your thing and they're doing their thing, you start with a little accountability. Hey, I'm going to focus on this. I might say, hey, I'm going to focus on my taxes. What are you doing? And they'll say, oh, I'm going to get done this stupid history assignment. I'm not trying to say history is stupid because I love it. But where you both sort of have a little accountability and then you both focus together. But I will have students say to me, wow, I would never be doing this much on my own. So that simple tricks like that. The timer, again, can help with this. So, saying how long do you want to work on that? 15 minutes. Okay, let's set the timer for 10 and see where you're at then. Sometimes for kids who have really short attention, I would say, okay, let's drop all the distractions. Let's see if you can literally focus on nothing else but this one assignment for 3 minutes. And I'll tell you what happens because I've done this a million times, parents. I will say 3 minutes. Something happens in the mind where they are willing to focus for 3 minutes, but it gets the ball rolling and they will be in flow and they can go longer than 3 minutes. But this is a threshold. So I call it expanding the threshold of focus. So we're trying to expand the threshold of focus. And those are some of the, I guess, overarching strategies that I use to expand the focus. You have to be patient. It's going to take a long time. You're going to be dealing with resistance. Oh, I will say this too. When your child is pushing their attention and concentration and focus, I had a parent the other day who said, I said, your kid is trying really hard. And I know that from working with the kid. The parent said, I don't see it. And I'm like, I believe this parent that they don't see it, but I see it. It is going on. This is what I do. I talk about the 3-to-1 rule, and that is where you give 3 positives to every 1 perceived negative. So if you're like, kiddo, you are so distracted right now, but I want to tell you something. I love your creativity. You're so amazing. You make me smile all the time. And I like how you were really cool to your sister earlier today. So what we do is the opposite. A kid gets an 89 and we say, why didn't you get a 90? A kid cleans their bedroom and you say, why is that sock still on the floor? So they feel like, hey, nobody ever notices what I'm trying to do. We want to flip that script, and it's going to take a long time. They're not used to it. So it's going to take a long time for you to practice that 3-to-1 rule. And I don't care if it's 3-to-1 or 10-to-1 or 1-to-1, which is an improvement for a lot of families. But we want our children to feel, I want to make this very clear from what I was saying before. This is an emotional thing. I want them to feel seen. I don't even remember the question.
No.
I have had a long day with a lot of calls. And,
no,
I think that was
a
a concluding thought to something.
I had to give you a moment pause there because it was good.
It was
good. So it was really about sustaining attention and being able to walk into that task. I guess the other piece is really.
Oh, so you have to notice when they do attend or concentrate or something 1% more than they used to, you have to notice it to them. And don't make a big deal of it. Don't be like, see, I told you so much of you. Don't do that. Just be like, hey, I noticed you just push yourself a little harder than you usually do. That's awesome. Then walk away, look away. I call them pebbles of positivity. Just throw these out all the time, the 3-to-1. Just throw these pebbles out all the time. When you see that they have done a little bit more, you have to notice it. You're reflecting back to them what you want them to notice because they didn't even notice they did it. So and that's executive function 2 is reflection or introspection or self-awareness. So reflecting back to them what they just did, and you're reinforcing what you want them to continue doing, and you're making it concrete rather than they just happen to do it for a minute longer. A win is a win, even if it's, so small. You have to notice their wins. I will tell you that is part of, if I had 3 ingredients to the magic that I can help a kid change their life, one of them is noticing the tiny, tiny, tiny micro successes. Sorry for interrupting you.
No, that's perfect. I think
Seth, I gotta say though, what's the other 2?
I don't know. I
You said 3. I'm like, okay. Love, I think unconditional love, but
I would say relationship. I start and end every presentation. If I do a presentation to a crowd, I start with saying the most important thing is the relationship and end with saying the most important thing is the relationship. And I talk about healthy and securely attached relating. You don't need to hear me talk about that right now. Just look up attachment theory and look up polyvagal theory while you're at it. So I would say relationship is the most important thing. Your relationship with your kid trumps everything. Everything. It's the most important thing. And I would say catching them, teachers have a saying, catch them being good. So the 3-to-1 rule, noticing them, seeing where their effort is, would be number 2. And number 3, I don't know.
It was good. It was good. I was just teasing. So we do have a few questions we'd like to answer. Susan, did you get the answers that you wanted from earlier questions?
Yeah, it was just sort of the priorities, because I asked the members to kind of set the priorities in terms of the executive functioning, what was really standing out right now in this time for them. So the last one really is like the time management and preparation, just trying to figure out the priorities, right? What do we do? And there's been some comments in the feed, and I know some questions that were sent was about kids that are basically, they're behind already, and this has happened. And now it's like, now what? We're really behind. And I think parents are feeling this pressure as well as the child. So,
and then with co-regulation and attunement, the kids feel that pressure too from you.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying don't feel your feelings, but they feel it. So, but you can say that to them. You can say, hey, I feel pressure. You probably feel my pressure. It's kind of how we do it. Okay. So first thing, that's a fantastic question. So the first thing again is the advocacy of the teachers. Hey, you need to know what's going on in my household. I don't care what other parents are saying. You need to know the reality of our household. We're struggling with this. Look, work with us here. Write that down, parents, right? Work with us here. Be like, look, work with us here. We're all on the same team. We're just trying to help our kid. We're overwhelmed. We want our kid to succeed. And we got a mountain to climb. We're not interested in climbing mountains. We're interested in doing, some learning experiences that are You could almost copy down what I'm saying right now, word for word, parents, by the way, if you rewatch this at whatever timestamp this is. But I've done a lot of these letters, but hey, work with us here. Look, we're not interested in climbing a mountain. We're overwhelmed. We're already so far behind. Look, work with us. What do we need to do to, quote, get caught up? And what we really want for our kid is to have some great learning experiences and that they can successfully manage. So work with us here. What do we need to do? Let us know. We'll hop on Zoom, phone, or email, whatever works for you. And then if they don't respond, you have to get right back at them. Send the same thing. Say, I know you're busy. I'm just going to keep this on the top of your inbox, friendly reminder, and send the exact same email. And do that every day until they get back to you. So I would start there. And then the other thing is they need a plan. And what will happen is that parents will often like write down a whole list of all the missings and stuff like that. Don't do that. And now I do agree that parents you can take that off their plate. You can figure out, now let them know that you're helping them. Be like, hey, do you want me to take this off your plate? I'll figure out what you got to do. And I'll just give you a piece of paper with 3 things at a time, or get the buy-in. How many do you want, or print off the history grades, highlight the things that are zeros or missings, hand it to your kid and say, pick 3 to do, or pick 1 to do. They have 17 missings. They can't handle that, guys. Just say, pick 1 or 2 to do today. Again, it's the emotional thing. So you can scaffold for them and do a lot of the stuff for them right now. You want them focused on doing the work, and you can, if you have the time in your schedule to do some of the stuff that you can take off their plate, there's nothing wrong with that. But make them know and get the buy-in. I want them to appreciate it. Don't let them take you for granted. Hey, I will do this for you. I will interrupt my schedule. I will actually take the time to print this for you. So they need a clear to-do list. And it's got to be short unless they can handle more than that. That's a different case. But for most kids, you're going to chunk it. And then you also want to consider something I talk to my kids a lot about is, they have a class, let's say from 10 to 10:45 a.m. I want the online class. I want these are the kids that are always late and unprepared. So I want to make it easy for them to have a sacred study space where they're prepared. I want 10 o'clock not to be 10 o'clock. I want 10 o'clock to be 9:45. They're still going to be late, some of them. So, but I want them to know that getting prepared is part of your homework. So if they say, oh, I have an hour's worth of homework, and I'm like, yeah, but it takes you 20 minutes to get your stuff together and 20 more minutes to even get started. That's 40 right there. And then you got an hour. That's an hour and 40. So I want to have realistic conversations with them and set them up for success. So we got to really buffer in time. And once you start buffering in this time and know that it just takes my kid a long time to do these things, and when I've been doing what I've been doing for as long as I've been doing it with as many kids as I've been doing this with, you really start to notice how insane it is, the pressure that we put on these kids. Now, you're highly driven kids who actually enjoy this, and there are some of those, they're fine, but we can't we can't compare them to each other. They're different beings with different needs and different skills and different strengths. And those kids, their strengths happen to be measured by school, and they do well. These kids, what we're measuring, they appear unsuccessful. So so anyhow, you're really going to see that stuff and say, how much time do I really want my kids spending on this? The kid I was working with earlier today had to write 4 paragraphs. This was a 5th grader, and he was so exacerbated by the thought of writing. He wrote 3 of writing the 4th paragraph. And the parents aren't teachers, so they didn't know this, but I'm looking at it, at the document, and I'm like, dude, we can just split this paragraph into 2 paragraphs. He had 1 really long paragraph. He was a 5th grader. He didn't understand that he actually had 2 big ideas in that 1 paragraph. So there are things that we can do to creatively deal with the pressure.
I love that. Thanks, Seth. So we do have a couple questions. Would you be game to, okay,
I'm
do a
here.
firing
My
line
brain
here?
is fried. So I don't even know if I'm making, it has been a
You're,
long day.
Yeah,
I don't
you're
even
doing
no,
know
us.
if I'm making sense at this point.
you're
You're
doing,
doing,
it's awesome. So
yeah.
one is, so it was a, healthcare workers or people that actually have to go to work and then they're leaving their high school kids at home. And, how do you help, like when you can't be by their sides? Is there anything you'd suggest? I know
Okay,
that's a very
so you
loaded
gotta
question.
start with a schedule with buy-in.
Yeah.
First of all, and this is one of the hardest things. There's no structure, and they have not learned the executive function skills to create a structure. So we have to have compassion for them. On the other hand, we're watching them flail, and if they don't get it together, especially if they're a senior and they fail classes and have to repeat senior year when they're supposed to go to college, what I want to say about this is I do not have good solutions for you. We do not have what we need to work with this effectively. So I'm very sad to say that. And we just need to do the best we can do. At this point, we need to communicate to the teachers and say it in that sort of a way. Hey, we do not have a structure. Will you please use words like these if you would like? My child simply legitimately does not have the executive function skills necessary to manage all of this mountain on their own. So work with us, please. Give us, our child, experiences that they can be successful with that are chunked down so that they can have success. They don't need to do 50 problems. Have them do 3 perfectly in math, for example. Or have them do the 3 hardest ones in each section. Look, our kid struggles with attention, or you can say has attentional difficulties, and has processing issues. A lot of my families, if you have a kid who has attentional and processing issues, that double whammy in terms of how long your child takes to get things done is really hard to watch because stuff keeps piling up and we keep setting them up for not success. So, email them and say, here's where we're at, work with us. And then the last thing I have to say about this is the hardest thing of all, particularly if you have a junior or senior. And that is that at some point you have to let go and they're their own person and they have to make their own decisions. And it's hard to watch, but it can be the best thing ever. So you want to figure out, where are you enabling? Where do you need to detach? Where do you need to let go? You can research some of those things, do your own work on yourself with that, your own spiritual work or emotional work, or your own therapy or self-development, or reading books about detachment and enabling and letting go and stuff, so that you can have peace of heart while you're watching them flail around and find their way. Again, it goes back to the relationship. The most important thing is a healthy and securely attached relationship where your child feels heard and seen and understood and valued and like they matter, and like you're there for them. I'm not saying you're not. Obviously, you wouldn't be here on this call if you weren't, but you want them to feel that. And I failed out of college. I almost failed out of high school. I dropped out of a second college, and kindergarten was fine. But ever since first grade, I started getting the messages on my progress reports. Lazy, does not try, does not pay attention, daydreamer, needs to work harder, needs to motivate himself. And that stuff really impacted my entire life. But I found my way. And the way that I found my way after almost failing out of college, and I mean, I struggled all through school, almost failing out of high school, failing out of college, dropping out of another college. The way I found my way was through the relationships. In other words, I finally I wanted something and to better my life finally for me. And I'm getting emotional here, sorry. And I had people who cared about me and who I had that secure attachment with, that I knew had my back, and I knew that I could take the risks and that I could do this with support. So I finally got to that place.
That's awesome.
But my parents let go. It's not that they weren't trying, but they had to let me go. And yeah.
Yeah. There's quite a few questions about
Now, if that touched you, you have to make an extra donation.
Well, it is touching, and it is hard to know when to let go sometimes. So I appreciate that. And there is a few comments, I think you've already addressed it, just about parents having trouble to even talk to their kids. And as you said, it's time and listening routine. One question that comes, like perfectionism, high IQ students, fear of failure, imposter syndrome, how does that play into or confuse executive functioning? So that's come up a couple times. I wasn't sure exactly, maybe you know how to address that question. But
that was a big question.
yeah.
And well, I want to thank you guys for what you do, and then I want to hear the question again.
Okay.
But I do want to acknowledge you and really say to the audience, I don't the donations for them. You guys are new to me, but just that you guys are providing a great service, and I really like what you guys are doing because it's very heartfelt, and I like stuff like that. So thank you for helping families. So please, I'll put a plug in for you.
I think, well,
right,
and
so
there is also a couple questions if you are like about executive functioning coaches and where they
cool. Well, let's do the one that you just asked.
Where do you find them and how do we find you? So we'll leave all those resources as well.
So
we'll make sure that we'll fill that people in on that too. So
great. So the one that you just asked was about perfectionism and other things. I'll address perfectionism first. I mean, perfectionism is an emotional experience. And I like Brene Brown's work. I also like Carol Dweck's work with mindset. But Brene Brown is the person who, she did a lot of research on shame and resilience and stuff like that. And she wrote a book called The Art of Imperfection or something. Mm-hmm. But perfectionism is an emotional experience. So it goes back to relationship and emotional regulation. And how this ties into Brene Brown is she talks about enoughness. Perfectionism in one way or another is I am not enough. I cannot do this perfect enough. And there's emotional pain that I experience when I think about how perfect I should be, how good of a friend I should be, a mother, a husband, a friend, a student in this class. There's all this pressure and I want to do it right. And some people will take perfectionism and they will execute. And they will execute very hard, and they will sometimes expend way too much energy being perfectionistic compared to the reward that they get, and to their own, where it causes themselves emotional or mental health problems or stress or anxiety or depression or overwhelm. But then you have these kids who struggle with executive function and are perfectionistic. And in those kids, I've seen sort of two types of perfectionism. One type of perfectionism where I feel like I've seen this pattern where a kid will start saying, I'm a perfectionist and I can't do it. And they've learned that that's a good enough excuse to get people off their back and to like go down some ridiculous rabbit hole that goes nowhere of dialogue, but that prevents them from having to deal with the situation at hand. So I've noticed that. And then I've noticed sort of a more, what I would call a more legitimate perfectionism where they really just feel like they can never do enough and they don't know where to start. And they're so hard on themselves. So again, that starts with the relationship, and it starts with people who know how to scaffold you up a millimeter at a time, and people know how to be patient with you where you feel safe to take a risk. The perfectionist, in order for them to execute and take action on a task, they have to take an emotional risk. That is a risk for them. And they risk that it's not good enough or that they're not good enough. If they've internalized it, it's a reflection on them. I'm bad. I'm worthless. I'm a piece of shit. I don't matter. So this is an emotional risk. So we, as the adult who's trying to help them, need to soften that risk, need to make it a no-brainer, need to make it a win, need to make it, wow, you just tried that. It didn't work. And I'm so proud of you. I don't care if it worked or not. Look what you just did. So I had a kid yesterday who is super perfectionistic. She said, my resistance is a 10 out of 10. Actually, I think her mom might be here. I think I saw her name. I think she might be here live. She said, my resistance is a 10 out of 10. Meanwhile, half hour, an hour later, she's still going. She's got so much done, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you said your resistance is a 10 out of 10, and look at all of what you did. So I wanted to leave that call with that sort of residue, if you will, of, hey, he saw me. I feel seen. So often we leave the residue of, yeah, you didn't finish that well enough. Yeah, you missed this one thing. Yeah, you forgot that paragraph. Yeah, there's still mistakes on this. And it's exhausting for these kids. So I guess that's what I would say about the perfectionism is it's an emotional thing. And that's where we want to do our work as the adult, is working in the relationship and in the nervous system and in the safety, the emotional safety, to help them feel safe to take that risk. And again, we're watching them as the parent. We're like, we know they need to get it done. It would just take them 5 minutes if they could just get started. What the heck is going on? They're going to fail if they, but it's where some families are at. That's just not where you can start.
Yeah. Thank you, Seth. There's one last question that everybody's asking. Would you mind, or do you want to save it and you can post it for later?
Yeah, let me make sure I'm not
It's
supposed to
A.
be anywhere.
Yeah.
That is
And-
why I use a planner, because
right. And we will
I'm good.
gather the questions.
I'm good.
So again, with the pandemic, everybody is online. So a lot of these older kids are online, like 6-7 hours a day doing projects. And there's been also questions about gaming and access to the gaming. But how do you help kids self-monitor or self-regulate or modulate that behavior online, you know, without being sort of that helicopter parent or putting in those controls that people, you know,
Well,
have?
I will say, if your kid is young enough and not resistant enough that you can put in those controls, I would err on the side of caution and more restriction and less time and more exercise and more fitness and more playing games and more art and more music and more stuff. If you have a kid young enough and willing enough where you can still get away with that as a parent and you can impose that structure, and I would go way, way restricted and give more access or freedom or whatever as they're showing responsibility. Now, I know many of you that are watching are way beyond that, and it's like you're like, Seth, that's never going to happen in my house. So that's a different story. So great question. How do I get these kids to do this? So again, it's painfully slow, parents. Please understand this. There's no quick fixes. It starts with, I have to really develop rapport and trust and relationship and attunement and co-regulation with the kid. And then I have to get the buy-in from them. So I'm thinking of one of my kids, Coyote, and I have to be like, dude, seriously, let me take your phone and hide it from you for 10 minutes. And then close the tab for 10 minutes. You know, it depends on the relationship, but I'm just thinking about this one kid who I have a very good relationship and rapport with. But where I have to be like, blah, blah, blah. Look, just let me hide your phone. I'll tell you where it is. I'll even tell you where and then I have to make it again. I wish I had a spoon to show you spoon feeding. I have a cup. It has to be digestible. It has to be spoon fed. It's an emotional issue. If I can say, Coyote, let me hide it for 10 minutes. Come on, dude. And he lets me do that for 10 minutes. Then what happens is he focuses for 12 or 15 or 48 if I'm lucky. So it starts really at those sorts of points, with getting him to take ownership in that stuff. Now, I will tell you, I've been working with Coyote for a year or more, or a year and a half. I don't remember. and we're doing the online thing now. This kid who was so resistant at first, it's taken a long time. Now he is the number one most consistent kid for me, where I'm not bugging him. He will ask me, Seth, can we meet on Wednesday? Can we do accountability on Tuesday? Can you make sure to ask me can you text me and ask me how I'm doing on this day? Can we co-work on this day? He's asking me. That's the turnaround. That's where I look at this kid. Now, this is a kid who last year was experimenting with marijuana and vaping, and his mom's talking to me about this and blah, blah, blah. And he has turned. He's a kid now where I look at him like, he's going to be okay. And I can say he's going to be okay, not because it's perfect, but because he's on the up. He's not on the down. So a lot of you are just going to have to put the brakes on, slow way down. And again, the ones where you can impose the structure, do it. Overcompensate, or I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. Over structure now if you got it, and loosen up later. If you don't got it, then you got to start in sort of triage, for lack of a better metaphor this time, in triage mode, and go from where you're at. Build the relationship, build the trust, build the willingness to take emotional risk, start small.
Incredible.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Seth. And again, guys, if the questions that we didn't answer, we'll gather them up and make sure you get a response. Also, the recording will be on Seth's YouTube channel, Seth, right? And we'll also send it out as well.
Yeah,
right?
and on our page, we'll have it for people to watch.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Angela asks, I still can't have a conversation with my 16-year-old. How can we start a conversation?
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good question, because you are not alone. There are a lot of people who can't even start it. So I want to tell you one very, very, very big tool that I use and teach parents all the time. And that is, sorry, I could go on for hours.
We could listen. So
that is called a pre-conversation. So what I often do, like let's use Coyote again. What I often do with a student is, let's say we're in my office and I say, Coyote, look, I need to talk to you about something. We need to go through your grades thoroughly tonight. I know you don't want to do it. I need to talk to you about it. I'm going to talk to you about it in about 15 minutes. And it'll take about 10 minutes. And then as long as you're honest with me, we're done. So I'm letting him mentally prepare for what's coming. I'm giving it how long it'll take, when it's going to happen, what it's going to be about. I'm not. And what happens is, when we have conversations a lot, we are using logic and reason, and we're lecturing and we're nagging and we're trying to get them to see the light, and they are shut down. So if their emotions are activated, they're not hearing us. How do you start a conversation? You tell them what's coming. And, maybe in this case you say, hey, look, oh, by the way, and if he said, well, no, just talk to me about it now, then of course I'm going to talk to him about it then. People often ask that question too. But basically you start with sort of the 3-to-1 rule. Hey, I love you. You mean the world to me. Smile. You're my everything. I care about you. I want to see you successful, happy, independent, and all the things. And I don't want to be bugging you, but I need to have a little talk with you. We need to talk about such and such. And it just take 10 minutes max. If 10 minutes is up on a timer, I will stop, I promise. Blah blah blah, whatever. But if you can't even start the conversation, you need to start with a pre-conversation. So your child, they're going to need to mentally prepare. If you're just trying to start a conversation, I guarantee you, just from reading this comment, you're in a situation where when you start it, your child's nervous system goes straight to fight, flight, or freeze, and that no conversation is going to happen. Anyhow, I love that question, and you're not alone.
That's great. That was a great way of
I shouldn't have looked at the comments.
No, it's good. I saw that one. I thought, should we pick that one up? Or
yeah, there's quite a few.
Yes.
But we can pull them together for you, so you can take a look, because some of them are just around executive functioning, coaching, and the area.
Like, how do you get a coach?
Yeah, and how to become a coach and designations and things like that as well. So, but Seth, again, we want to be respectful of your time, and we're just so grateful. So many ahas and, side laughs from it, because I've done all the things that you said not to do.
Yeah, I hope nobody feels alone, because there are 75 people on here and there were 89 earlier, and you're not alone.
Yeah, the guilt overrides parents. I think there's quite a few things, and that's not your intention. I know, it's that's the new day and starting the next day and working together. So
yeah, the way I phrase it is, we've all got stuff. We've all got baggage. We've all got skeletons in the closet. We've all got dysfunctional families, some more than others, but we've all got some level of it. And there's no shame in it. Stan Tatkin, who's an attachment person, he says, all people are difficult. So, we've all got the stuff. And I think that the problem comes when somebody isn't willing to look at themselves. As long as we crack the door open, we take a millimeter of action forward, it's all good.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for joining us. And again, Seth, we will continue to journey with you and keep folks updated of what you're up to. And again, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And
You're welcome.
for everybody
Should I
else
tell
attending,
people where to find me and stuff?
I've got that in the I put it at the front, but I'll put it also at the bottom, and we'll be sending a summary.
Yeah, we've got links of you on the page, on any page where we're promoting you.
Great. Can I tell you about what's going on right now?
Please do.
So on the top of my website at sethperler.com, I have a COVID-19 resource page where I've just been adding things that are relevant for teachers, parents, and students on a separate page for each one. I'm just continuing to add to it because all three need different messages at this time. And then you can subscribe on my YouTube channel. That helps me grow my YouTube channel. So if you just click subscribe, it will not spam you or anything. It'll give you alerts only if you want. But anytime you thumbs up it, I'm trying to grow the channel, and that does help my channel. If you like a video, click like, please. And then on TFOS, the Executive Function Online Summit, which we did last year, that will be coming up August 7th. I'm super excited about it. I just started reaching out to my speakers again this year. It's a free summit. You can buy it if you want to buy it, but it's free for 4 days. And it was awesome. People loved it. There's about 10,000 families from all over the world on that thing. And just, I was blown away, but it was super fun and helpful to people.
It was very well done. Yeah,
the link will be there, but you can register for that now and forget about it.
That's awesome. Great. And I know people were asking about our parent group. We have a parent membership community as well, where people can come on, and we work monthly, working through plans, trying to figure out what you need. We have a private Facebook group, and then we also bring on experts as well, based on what your needs are. And we're adjusting that based on what's happening right now. So we'll send that out as well for people to know about. And yeah. So thank you, Seth. It's been incredible, you sharing all your knowledge. And I know everyone has had many, many takeaways. And I'm sure we'll be connecting again in the near future.
Yeah, and thank you guys for what you do.
So welcome. All right, everyone, have a great